Perfect. Okay, everyone, super excited as always to welcome you to the podcast today. This is a conversation that I've actually been looking forward to speaking to you, Grandmaster Cook, for many years, and the podcast has given us a wonderful opportunity to finally do that. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
What I'll do, sir, is I will introduce you to the listeners to the show, and then we can hopefully get into the conversation, if that's okay. It's lovely to see you in your fantastic dojang setting as well today.
Yeah, we just finished a class about 10 minutes ago, as a matter of fact.
Fantastic.
So I'm all warmed up. You ready to train?
Brilliant. Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. Please one day we can organise that.
I'd love to do that.
Yep. Okay, everyone. So I'm joined today by Grandmaster Cook, who is an 8th degree black belt. He is the owner and chief instructor at the Chosun Taekwondo Academy in New York. And you're now president of the United States Taekwondo Association.
Yes, the USTA. That was an organization that was founded in 1980 by my late teacher, Grandmaster Chun. And it was in accordance with the fact that Grandmaster Chun was assisting Dr. Unyoung Kim with the creation of the World Taekwondo Federation, as you know it then. And when he returned to America, the national governing body for Taekwondo was known as the United States Taekwondo Union. Yep. And that job had been taken, so Grandmaster Chun decided to create a separate entity that catered to the traditional side of Taekwondo, you know?
Yeah.
And thus that was the origins of the United States Taekwondo Association. And the mission of the USTA is to promote excellence in the traditional and evolving art of Taekwondo. So it's not a provincial organization whereby we put blinders on for things that are happening, you know, in the future, but its main mission is to maintain the traditional relevance of Taekwondo.
That's one thing that I'll bring up later in the conversation, actually, which I really want to talk to you about is, just as you say there, not having blinders from following your work for many years now. It's one of the things that truly stands out about you, sir, is your willingness and this view of encompassing all areas and all styles of Taekwondo in your promotion. Really, you're not certainly not one for simply focusing on your own style or your own association, but one of encompassing all areas of Taekwondo.
You know, I know you're familiar with, as most worthy practitioners around the world, with Dr. George Vitale.
Yeah, yes, sir.
And Dr. Vitale is a very good friend of mine. He not only a good friend, but a very supportive one as well. He pops up in the strangest places. In fact, quite a few years ago, I was presented with an award for my books by the Korean government and was called to Washington, D.C. to their embassy to accept it. And I was very, very honored. And still to this day, it's one of the greatest honors I've had. And I was there with several other practitioners who also qualified for that honor. And I look out in the audience, and who's sitting there but Dr. Vitale? And he had come all the way down to Washington, D.C., you know.
Yes, sir.
Also, other times when I spoke at the Korea Society here in New York, he would be there to support me as well. And as Dr. Vitale is noted for saying, we have more in common in Taekwondo than we do have differences. And, you know, a statement like that can be so mild in its apparent superficial context.
Yeah.
But when you think about the weight of that statement in the world today, in the world strife that is going on, particularly in our country, in the United States right now,
of course,
everybody can take that to heart and practice it in a real way. But it's certainly, since this is what we're focusing on is Taekwondo, whether you are a member of the Action International Martial Arts Association, or whether you're a member of the ITF exclusively, or the WT, or Kuki Taekwondo, or Chosun, or USTA, our basic vocabulary and technique is the same.
Yes.
So we have many, many things to build on communally rather than separately.
Absolutely, sir. I really hope that we can spend some time later in the conversation discussing Grandmaster Chun and Grandmaster Cho, of course, as well. I'll never forget on one of Grandmaster Cho's visits to Scotland, he was conducting a seminar with many different associations, and during his talk at the end of the seminar, he said, train together, learn together. And it was the message that he was trying to share to AMA members, ITF members, Taekwondo Association of Great Britain members. There was members from lots of different associations, and it was really a point that he really tried to spread whilst he was teaching. Regarding sort of the current events, and not so much the political events in the United States at the moment, but the worldwide events of COVID, one of the things that I've really enjoyed is reading your messages on social media as a traditional grandmaster, and trying to guide not only your own students, but the wider Taekwondo community through this difficult time that we've had over the last 10 months or so. How do you feel Taekwondo has helped you personally and the members of your school get through this difficult time?
It's been very difficult, and I must tell you that I feel very, very strongly towards you, towards Master Ainslow, towards all the UK schools and students who have gone through. I believe this is your third lockdown now, am I right?
I believe so. Yeah.
And you start to lose count after a certain amount of time. And I know how difficult it is. What we do in Taekwondo, especially traditional Taekwondo, is very strange to begin with. It's a very weird thing that we do, to get people to put on uniforms and take worth in belts, to get up and have them come to attention and bow to us, as instructors, is very strange to begin with. And people sometimes look at it as a cult, which clearly it isn't. And anybody watching this video knows that it's not. It's much, much more than anything even remotely than that. So being faced with a global pandemic on top of that, on top of the struggles that we normally go through to promote our schools, has been earth-shattering. It's been seismic proportions, But we have one thing as an ally that most people don't, and that's true indomitable spirit.
Yes.
And perseverance. If you are a white belt, if you are a yellow belt or a green belt or orange belt, whatever, you're still learning those virtues. In fact, you're still learning those virtues up at purple belt, red belt level, right? Yeah. But once you become a black belt, your life changes. This is a license to learn, not a permit to quit.
Yes, sir.
That's what this is. And we, just like university students, need to take responsibility for our own training, no more as a color belt that we simply holding our students' hands. We must let them go at some point and start finding their own true nature as a martial artist, right? So fortunately, we're cultivating this indomitable will and this perseverance to begin with. So we have an ally in this terrible time.
Yeah.
So in our case, and since to answer your question directly, in our case at Chosun, my wife, who is my great-great-grandmaster,
Yes.
as yours is, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Helped me make my decision to go online literally a day after our lockdown last March. The day the government said to lock down, we went directly online. Now, we were fortunate in that we have a gentleman who handles all our IT needs. It's an expensive proposition, but he handles all our internet information. And so we gave this gentleman a call. It's Walling Road International Technologies. And he came right in with his iPad. He came in with all the stands and everything we needed, and we went right on to Zoom immediately.
Yeah.
So we literally lost maybe 1 day of training, and we were back online again. Now, the Zoom platform is the biggest dojang in the world. I think we
Indeed.
can say
Yeah.
that with some confidence, right? I knew nothing about it. In fact, I'm still learning a lot about it, breakout rooms and all this type of thing. But I do have a technical background in professional audio. That was another profession I was in for many years. So it didn't chase me away. I was drawn to it. You know, I wanted to learn more about it. So over the course of the months, we upped our technological capabilities with better cameras, bigger screens, better computers, lighting equipment, to the point now where I feel that we can present and broadcast a class that's worthy of a student actually imagining that they're here in the dojang, right?
Yeah.
So rather than diminish our online presence, we increased it dramatically. And during the 6 or 7 months that we were forced to lock down, we never really lost any steam whatsoever. I would have 3 or 4 classes a day, 7 days a week. I would teach them myself for the most part, although in the morning I would have an assistant, and in the evening I would have an assistant.
Yeah.
And the 3 of us were trustworthy enough where we didn't have a mask on. You can see I don't have a mask on right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
That's because there's nobody here but my wife.
Of course.
But so we embraced the Zoom platform. Thank goodness for Zoom, right?
Yeah.
We embraced that. And then as soon as the lockdown was over, people just could not wait to get back into the dojang, as you can well imagine. So we had restrictions involved. We had mask requirement. We still do. Social distance, you can't see it, but we have marks all over the floor of the dojang here for 6 foot minimum. There's sanitizing stations all over the dojang. We sanitize between each class, spraying doors and handles, and we have automatic hand sanitizer machines. And we've limited the amount of people per class, you know.
Yeah.
So we've managed now to have a dichotomy whereby we have safe in-dojang classes that are simulcast at the same time.
Okay, great.
You know, all my students are facing the front the way we would normally face a class. And then if you look at our schedule online, you'll see we have blocked out black spaces where we have exclusive online classes where I'm facing the way I'm facing you right now with the screen to my back, with the front to my back. And I have other students who come in for that class. They can do that. But mainly I'm addressing my online students.
Right, yeah.
So we have this juxtaposition between exclusive live stream class and then simulcast classes that are shown here in the dojang. With that being said, yes, I've lost quite a few students.
Okay.
But I've lost those students based on the fact that they just cannot handle the online presence.
Yeah.
And they're just too fearful to come out of their homes.
Yeah.
I cannot force them to do that. It would be irresponsible of me to do that. I exhort them to come out and not fall into the trap, you know, do the best they can with the safety restrictions we have here in the school. But this is truly a world event that is very, very scary and very, very dangerous. And you must be empathetic to all your students.
100%, 100%. One of the little notes that I took whilst you were talking there, sir, was you said that Taekwondo was an ally for us. And that's actually such a wonderful way to address that. I wonder how personally I would have coped with the changes if it weren't for 30 years of Taekwondo experience behind me. Maybe from a personal point of view, how has the art helped you mentally, physically, obviously, to work your way through the problems that have come up over the last 10 months or so?
Yeah, it's a good question. Very introspective, you know. One of the reasons I think back to the days, people ask me this often, how did you get involved in the martial arts? I'm sure they ask the same thing to you.
Yes, yeah.
And I grew up in a section of New York called Brooklyn, which many people have heard.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty rough and tumble section, you know. It was a nice section. I liked my youth. It was a nice place to grow up. But there were always fights. There were school fights and schoolyards, and you were always being called out and things like this. And then, of course, I matured and grew up, and no one would get in any fights. You know, when you get older, you just don't get in fights, and hopefully. And then I had a family. You know, I had two beautiful daughters who were twins and a beautiful wife. And I thought to myself one day, because I got involved in the martial arts late in life. I wasn't a child when I became involved.
Okay.
And I said, what would happen if something threatened us? Would I be able to defend myself? You know, and I started ruminating on that. And then one day a friend of mine asked me if I would be interested in becoming involved in a martial arts class that they were going to start. And I said, martial arts, that's intriguing, mainly because of the philosophical aspects of it.
Okay,
That's what really hooked me, you know. So I did get involved, and I was hooked from the first day. I knew this is something I wanted to do. I remember my teacher asking me, and this was a good thing to do, and all teachers should do this. First day a student starts, ask them what their goal is. Doesn't have to be a big, long conversation. And I said I wanted to build a quiet confidence. That's what I wanted to do. So the more I got involved in the martial arts, and I didn't know, like many people I would imagine, I didn't know Taekwondo at the time. All I knew I was getting involved in a martial art. Now, I should have done a little bit more investigation, but I didn't.
Yeah.
You know, I asked my students to do investigation, but I didn't. It might have been jujitsu, it might have been Tang Soo Do, it might have been Karate Do, it might have been Aikido, who knows?
Yeah.
Fortunately, Taekwondo was perfect for me in almost every way, right? Now, the more I got involved in the art, I had a very strong thirst for the intellectual aspects of it. So I started doing a lot of research on Korea. Mm-hmm. That's when I realized that this was more than just a physical art. I looked at the Korean people and the adversity that they went through over the years with invading pirates, with warring kingdoms, with imperialistic domination, with civil strife, world wars, internal strife from their own government, you know, and looked at that community today and realized that's the 11th strongest economy in the world. Now, how did they do that?
Yeah.
How did they raise themselves out of the ashes of the Second World War and the Korean conflict, which left everything decimated?
Yeah.
And as you know, from 1910 to 1945, Korea was annexed by Japan, and all vestiges of their culture was subdued. You know, children couldn't go to good schools, books were burned. They had to change their names to Japanese names.
Yeah.
Their women were used as comfort women, right?
Yeah.
So how did they take themselves? What is the element of their society? Of course, bolstered by the three Asian paradigms of Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. What made their society so resilient, right? And if you want to boil that down and distill it down into a couple of words, I think, as General Che said in the 5 tenets of Taekwondo, indomitable spirit.
Yeah.
Refuse to being crushed, refuse to being defeated. So with that in mind, and when I write about and when I talk about these cultures and the facts of Taekwondo, it's not my lips moving, it's my heart beating. That's what it is. It's me feeling these things sincerely. So in answer to your question, how personally has Taekwondo helped me? Every morning I wake up, I think of those two words, indomitable spirit, right?
Yep.
There's mornings when I don't want to get up. There's mornings or evenings when I read an email from a student that says they're flagging, you know, they're getting ready to leave, they can't.
So,
That I say, no, be strong, you're the motivator, you're the umbrella under which these people come for comfort. Don't give up, never give up, keep going. And I guess more than anything else, that's really how Taekwondo has helped me personally deal with this.
Again, everything that you've said so far, I can agree with 1,000,000%. Our students that we're so lucky to have, I always feel that it's a complete 50-50 relationship. And I think, or I doubt, they really know just how motivating their journey can be to their instructor or master or grandmaster. It was never an option for me to give up in any way during this last year. It just wasn't an option for the two reasons that you've maybe touched on. The fact that, well, three reasons actually, because I can never get away from the representing Grandmaster Cho element either. So if I quit at anything in my Taekwondo journey, I see that as a reflection on or a disrespect to his leadership. So that's the first thing I would say. The indomitable spirit, of course, but then that thing about picking yourself up every day to be there for your students and your members. That's I can't stress that enough, how important they are to us.
You know, here in America, they talk about essential workers. I guess it's the same.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Right. We talk about, my daughter is a RN. She's a nurse.
Yes.
She's right out there on the front lines, and I worry about her every day. She just first got her first inoculation the other day with Moderna.
Oh, fantastic.
And you know, I'm glad and I'm nervous about that at the same time.
Okay.
But, you know, people wouldn't agree with this universally, but I view you, you know, Master Amaris, myself, as essential workers, because we are motivating our students to be in a better place than they could possibly be, left alone to their own devices. And I'm sure many of them would find some outlet that might work, because they are strong people. But being in the community of Taekwondo, being in the cyberspace community of Taekwondo, they have a certain solace that they can gain from their training, and you know that's got to be helpful.
Yeah.
So you are absolutely right. I mean, I feel that we're essential workers for our students. Bringing up Grandmaster Cho,
Sir.
I think that everyone in the Taekwondo community, regardless of affiliation, can realize the huge contributions he's made and the inspiration that he's given all of us, again, regardless of affiliation. You, Grandmaster Philip Amaris, and the other masters underneath him are beacons to all of us on loyalty to your master. Because I see your social media posts, I see Grandmaster Amaris's social media posts, and we've always been in touch because of my books and things like that.
Yes, sir. Yep.
I don't know how many of the young upcoming masters will be that close in allegiance to their grandmasters, the way I was with Grandmaster Chun, still am.
Yes, sir.
And the way you gentlemen certainly are with Grandmaster Cho. It goes far beyond just loyalty. You know, it goes to the point of you being, them being the venerable master and you the worthy disciple.
So.
That's essentially what we are as disciples of these great men.
Yeah.
And you are under their shadow, and most people would say a blossom can't grow under a shadow. But that's not true, because we gain our strength from these men. So by you alluding to the fact that you couldn't even consider abbreviating your Taekwondo training because it would be a reflection on Grandmaster Cho, is a direct proportion of your desire and your loyalty to someone and your deep meaning to Taekwondo because of that. You know, it's good that you bring something like that up, because not a lot of people feel that these days.
The other I see three main stalwarts of Grandmaster Cho's Taekwondo, and they are, of course, Grandmaster Cho himself, Grandmaster Philip Ramirez, and our own Grandmaster here in Europe, Grandmaster John Darcy. Mm-hmm. And to look at, I would not be where I am in martial arts, or indeed, I would not be where I am in life if it weren't for, first of all, Grandmaster John Darcy, who is our European Grandmaster and representative, and obviously in turn then Grandmaster Cho. It's definitely something that we forget very quickly nowadays, and maybe now is the time for us possibly to have a chat about Grandmaster Richard Chun and Grandmaster Cho, and maybe exchange some stories about both gentlemen. I can say for sure that, as I say, I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for the lessons and the opportunities that those gentlemen have given me. So it's something that's just ingrained within me. That I'll give you a very quick example, and I'm probably stepping on your interview at the moment by talking too much. But in AIMA we have coloured uniforms. So Grandmaster Cho would always be in the blue uniform, and Master Darcy here in Europe would have the blue uniform. So if anyone in rank up to that degree, they can't be in the blue uniform at the same time as the present Grandmaster. I don't have a blue uniform, even though I would have the right to wear one in my own dojang, because in my head, that's Grandmaster Darcy's uniform and it's Grandmaster Cho's uniform. And as I say, I have the right to wear one in my school, but it just doesn't sit right to me. I just can't bring myself to do it. So anyway.
Very humble.
Well, maybe I've had good teachers. I've had good teachers. Let's have a wee talk about the Grandmasters then, particularly Grandmaster Chun, who was your own instructor. Can you tell us a little bit about him?
Oh, it's kind of hard to talk about him a little bit because I miss him so much.
Of course.
There's so much that comes up during class that I want to still ask him. Technical things, emotional things, and business things, But I can tell you one story in particular that'll frame anything else I want to say about him. And this really goes to show you the disciple, venerable master image, but it was one day in October 3 years ago when he was getting near the end of his life. And he called me and told me to come to his home, which I had been to many, many times. And my wife and I drove down to his home, and he was sitting in a chair, all bundled up in pajamas and a robe. You can tell he was ill, very ill. Yeah. And his wife was sitting in another chair off to the side. And that's when he said, "Doug, I want you to take over the USTA. I want you to run it, And I had told him many times before that I didn't feel worthy. I felt he had other seniors who would be best suited to do that. And his words were, "No, you are the business person. You can do it. And you need to do it on your own. And you need to do it regardless who comes and complains and, any kind of jealousies or anything like this." And this happens in the martial arts. You see it in the ITF when General Che died, And I was overcome. And I went to him. It was a classic image. I went to him and I knelt down in front of him and I took his hand and I kissed it,
Yeah.
And everybody had tears in their eyes. My wife, his wife, he did, I did. But the point is, from that time forward, I was invested with something from him. Maybe it was a transmission. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe it was a mystical transmission, the way it's supposed to be, where I said, he is now gone, and now it's up to me to make the decisions. I need to be responsible for those decisions. I need to be clear-headed, I need to be accountable, and I need to be wise. Now, having said that, I have a proclivity for moving ahead at full steam. I am either on or I'm off. That's the way my personality is. So several months later, we meet his wife for lunch, after everything calmed down a little bit. Patty, my wife, and I and Mrs. Chun met for lunch. And she said that her daughter had a dream, and Grandmaster Chun had said regarding me and my school, "Don't be hasty." And she said that was my message. She was supposed to tell me that, not to be hasty, So my wife looked at me and she said, I told you, you know, because I'm always moving ahead. So that's another thing that I need to do is think through things a little bit more, right? Now, the only reason I bring that up is because you asked me about the relationship I shared with him. It was a very, very good, but very professional relationship. You know, we got close emotionally, but mainly professionally. And in taking over the United States Taekwondo Association, when I held the memorial for him here, because we had a very big memorial with a couple of hundred martial artists from all over the world came.
Yep.
Mexico, all over the United States, Europe came for the memorial. I stood up and I said a few words, but then I did something that I'm so happy that I did because I had certain martial artists who had come, who were direct students of his, get up and speak about their relationship with him. Well, wouldn't you know that every single one of them had a story that was so personal and so charged that you would think that there would be no one else that he could have spoken to like that. So what that told me was Grandmaster Chun had a real innate talent to make every student he ever spoke to feel like they were the only student who he ever had.
Yeah.
Because those stories were so special. How do you do that? I mean, how do you shift one's focus and categorize it to make each person feel that special? Quite frankly, I don't have that talent. I don't think I do. But our relationship was a very strong one. He would tell me so many good stories while we were traveling the back roads of Korea together on a bus. Sometimes swearing me to secrecy because of the sensitivity of those stories. But, you know, about the Mudokwan and things like this, the past history. So just like you said about Grandmaster Cho, there is absolutely no question in my mind that Chosun would never be the school it is today. The USTA obviously would have probably just passed away, right? I mean, we have things like this that we've done now. You've seen this. This is Hunlian magazine.
Yep.
You know? This is the Journal of the United States Taekwondo Association that that Grandmaster Cho was featured in. Of
course.
Not this article, the last edition. And I thank you all for doing that. Thank you so much for that. I can't tell you how much that meant to us. And so we're promoting the USTA to keep Grandmaster Chun's legacy alive. And as you know, I have the USTA Pumse series now on the first and third Sunday of every month, where worldwide we're proliferating his forms, just his forms, and regardless of Dan level, whether you're a first Dan, seventh Dan, you are offered the forms as Grandmaster Chun taught them, forms that, in the words of one of the students who are taking advantage of the series, are an endangered species. That's what they are. They're forms that will eventually disappear. Not that we're the only protectors of them, but sometimes I mention them to other teachers and they have no idea what I'm talking about. So I know that these forms are very precious heirlooms, right? That they're inheritances, that is my now responsibility to promote and keep alive. So I'm very reluctant to say it because I don't want to seem like I have hubris or something like that. But I feel that in a way, Grandmaster Chun was right when he appointed me the sole successor to the USTA because I take it that seriously. This is my job. This is my profession. This is my life. You know, I don't go out the door to an accounting job. I don't go out the door because a plumber. I'm not, you know, those things are wonderful jobs, but this is my profession. And it's my profession 24 hours a day. My wife can tell you, last night, I just got a new book from the KTA on hand techniques. Right? And here I am at night reading the book, you know, because that's what we do. That's what you and I do. That's what Grandmaster Maris does, Grandmaster Darcy. That's what we do because that's our job.
One of the things we can touch on two things, hopefully here at the same time. One is, and you've mentioned this a couple of times, and it was Grandmaster Chun's, and in fact, any of the original or older generation Grandmasters, their traditional Taekwondo. So I want to ask you in a wee second about what you think traditional means. What is traditional Taekwondo? And the other part of that, which might be connected and might not be, is when I look at someone like Grandmaster Cho and Grandmaster Chun or Nam Tae or any of these original Korean grandmasters, do they stand alone over and above the rest of us? Now, you've reached the rank of grandmaster, and who knows, it may be in my future. I very much doubt it, and don't think I would ever actually be deserving of the title when I look at the people who have gone before me. But they were special, special men, I feel. And that's no disrespect to any of the rest of us, but were they different? And how can we maintain that tradition that they gave us? I think that's one big question.
No, that's a you know, I first of all, number one, thank you for doing this, because this needs to be done. One of my students had asked me to do it for several weeks during our lockdown.
So,
It was called Ask the Grandmaster. It sounded a little pretentious, but that's what he wanted to do. So we did about 4 or 5 segments, and then we opened up again and we stopped. But it was a way for me to speak philosophically to my students or anybody who wanted to see it. It's online on YouTube worldwide, so anybody can see it. But the point was, you were able to spend some time that you don't usually have during class to go through it. So what you're doing right now is such a worthy thing, and I thank you for this. That's number one. Number two, you should be Wolf Blitzer on CNN. You're a very good interviewer. You ask the right questions. I don't know in Scotland who the big broadcaster is, but you should be that person.
thank you.
Asking the definition, or let's put it in a different way, demystifying what we define traditional Taekwondo is really important, because look, a student, just like I did, like I said earlier, you walk into a school, you sign up to study martial arts, and sometimes you don't know anything about what you're getting yourself into. You know you're getting yourself into martial arts, but not sure what it's all about. Now, Taekwondo, we can boil that down to another level and say, what kind of Taekwondo are you getting involved in? Now, we know pretty much that we can define it down into 2 points. Just like a coin, it has 2 sides, right? One is the Olympic sport or competitive combat art of Taekwondo, and the other is the traditional martial art of Taekwondo. Now, what does that mean, right? When I describe traditional Taekwondo to potential students, I explain to them about the Olympic sport of Taekwondo, and then I tell them that Chosun and the USTA features a type of martial art that was practiced during the 40s, 50s, 60s, before the globalization in sport of Taekwondo became, the Olympic sport.
For sure.
The type of Taekwondo that focused on self-defense, that focused on self-enrichment and physical fitness. Now, if you start saying more than that, you usually start losing them. But, you know, for you and I and for your students and the listeners of this podcast, I think we can go a little bit further and say that the curriculum that was taught during the original 5 institutes or Kwans, right? You know, the Changmu Kwan, the Songmu Kwan, the Muda Kwan, the Yunmu Kwan, those original schools were obviously focused on Hyung, or Pumse. Pumse is a modern name, so I stick to the word Hyung, right? They focused on various types of self-defense, whether it be Ilsushi Deran, which is an older term for Hanban Jirugi now, Samban Jirugi or Samsushi Deran, They focused on Hoshin Sul, self-defense, grab techniques, right? They focused a strong illumination on basics, stepping basics, I watch videos from the Mudakwan that were digitized, and these men would spend, and unfortunately it was men. There were very few women, but thank goodness we have that today. But the point is, they would spend long hours on basics, just really fine-tuning and perfecting basics, There would be a great deal of ritual involved as far as proper respect and bows, Uniforms were worn when available, and it was a very hard style of training, right? So when I talk about traditional Taekwondo, that's the type of all-encompassing curriculum. I look at Taekwondo, traditional Taekwondo as a mosaic, and it has all these different components to it.
Yeah.
And if any one of those components are missing, it's like a puzzle missing a part, right?
Yeah.
Then we take the sportive side of Taekwondo, and you know what that's all about. I mean, you're learning some very quick kicks, some baljiki, some footwork techniques, you know, for competitive purposes to win the medal, to take the trophy home. And I think that about 3 or 4 years ago, it might have been a bit longer, Master Juan Moreno, do you remember who he is, Juan Moreno?
The name rings a bell, sir, for sure, yeah.
First silver medalist in America to get
okay, yep.
a silver medal. He was a young man then.
Yep.
Now he's grown up, but he has his own dojang in California. And he said something that I really applaud him for. He said, we don't teach martial artists here, we teach athletes.
Okay.
Right? So it wasn't, even though they're doing Taekwondo, they weren't teaching them self-defense. They were teaching them the fast footwork, the dodging, the leg work that requires strong kicking. But they weren't focusing on forms. They weren't focusing on hand techniques. They weren't focusing on throws or sweeps because they don't count in the ring.
Yeah.
Those things are forfeited altogether, right, in favor of gold. So he made the pronouncement, and rightly so, and students should be told that. You're going to be an athlete here. You're not necessarily going to be a martial artist. So I don't want to create a schism, but there is one, and you may as well recognize it and respect it, you know? Yeah. So certainly that's my definition of traditional Taekwondo, and that's what we do. The second part of your question about the Grandmasters, right? Okay, so we have Grandmaster Richard Chun. We have Grandmaster Henry Cho, Sisak Henry Cho. We have Grandmaster Sondok Sun, Daisha Kim, Heel Cho. You know, all these great masters, right? What separates them from us aside from their nationality? I mean, yes, they were all Koreans, right? Now, I come back to what I initially said about the culture and the social fabric of Korea during the 1940s and 50s.
Yeah.
What these men went through as children are hard to describe. I know Grandmaster Chun had to flee Seoul with 3 other families on a wooden boat during the invasion and occupation of Seoul. And it took them 3 days to sail down to Jeju Island. And on Jeju Island, he was treated like a refugee, even in his own country.
Yep.
And went to study his form masterless, without any master, on the heights of Mount Halasan, which is the highest mountain in Jeju Island, alone. Now, when we have to go through that type of thing, let's find out what the results are for us. Are we going to be with the same social stamina, the same perseverance and will that they had when they went through that type of thing? You know, we have our own brand that we have to go through. This is one of them. This is our Mount Halasan. You know, this is our soul today going through these pandemics. 20, 30 years from now, one of your students will have a podcast, or who knows, a hologram. You know?
Yeah.
And the question will be, how did your master, how was he so great? You know, how did he manage to live through what he, and you'll be the one they're talking about, because this is our time now. This is what we have to go through. This is what's molding our martial art right now. And how we deal with this is going to be a direct result of what our students are going to look like, the complexion of our students in the years to come.
Which I think is it's the number one responsibility that we have, and it goes back to the point that I made earlier on about representing our heritage, about not quitting because it has a reflection. If you were to quit, or I was to quit, it would be a direct reflection on, or a disrespect to what our teachers, our grandmasters had went through. Grandmaster Cho talks about it as well, and it's documented about going into the streets to literally find a bowl of rice.
Mm-hmm.
Most people, that is where perseverance and indomitable spirit is forged during those situations. I think it's kind of you, and it's very forward thinking that we might one day be similar to them. I still struggle with the thought, but we should definitely persevere to try and achieve that standard. But I look at someone like Grandmaster. I was in Hawaii. Well, wasn't last year now, because last year was written off.
That was a zip, yeah.
Yeah, that was gone. But in 2019 November, he would have been 79 at that stage, and still teaching every class,
Mm-hmm.
still hitting the bag, still running laps around the school. It's just they're and you could tell very similar stories about Grandmaster Chun, and they're just, I feel, just very, very special individuals.
I'll tell you one good story about the resilience of Grandmaster Chun. This is
Yes,
a
please.
good one too. We were at the Kukiwan. We were training there, and it was probably about 2014 maybe, and he was an immaculate dresser. He oozed class. He would always have a three-piece suit on, very fitted suits, expensive suits. And because we were meeting Wan Ku who was one of the presidents of the Kukiwan at the time,
Yep.
or Wan Sik Kang, that's who we were meeting. He was all dressed up, and I had my dobak on because we were training.
Yep.
And have you been to the Kukiwan? Have you ever been there?
I haven't, sir. I haven't even been to Korea, which I want to talk about.
First of all, you have to go. We have to put a trip together when time is
Absolutely.
right.
Please do. Yeah, that would be fantastic. Yep.
The connection you make there chronologically and geographically when you go is second to none. And also, it's a pilgrimage. That's the way I look at it. It's a pilgrimage. When you go to the Kukiwan, when you go to the Taekwondo Wan, but mainly the Kukiwan, you're going to one of the great cathedrals of Taekwondo.
Yeah.
It's this, where it's an older building. It was built in 1972, as you know. And the stairways are very, very narrow, especially going down to the locker rooms.
Okay.
And there's a steel stairway. So Grandmaster, I go down, and it's a quick 90-degree turn, and Grandmaster Chun is going down the steps, and he makes the turn, and he falls.
Okay.
His arms go out, and he lands flat on his back on the edge of a steel step.
Yeah.
Here, he was probably about 78 at the time.
Yeah.
Right? Well, we panic. We could see him breaking his spine at that point,
Yeah.
And he looks around, shakes himself. He goes, I'm okay. And it's because of the way he fell, the way we're taught to roll and break the fall. He did that in slow motion, it looked like, in slow motion.
Yeah.
He did that. And a few minutes later, he was up. He had a big gash in his back from it. We took him to the first aid. They put some ointment on it and a bandage and thing. 20 minutes later, he was back on the training floor with us.
Yeah. Yep.
79 years old, So that's the type of resilience these men have, And when we talk about these men, again, I wish we could include women in that, but they just weren't given the opportunity back then like they are now,
Yeah. One last quick story. Just before we move on to another subject I want to chat to you about, the last time that Grandmaster Cho was in Europe, again, the opportunities that were given to me by his senior student, Grandmaster Darcy, I can never repay that ever, because he would allow me to tag on in most of the trips, and you got access over breakfast or over dinner to sit and chat, or even just listen to Grandmaster Cho talking, and that's a debt that will never ever be repaid. That, to me, that was invaluable. However, the last time Grandmaster was here to teach a seminar, and I can't remember whether it was the left shoulder or the right shoulder, but he was in so much pain with this shoulder injury. And Master Darcy spoke to him at length throughout that sort of day of the seminar, I think. Sir, be careful. You've got nothing to prove. Don't throw with this shoulder. Everybody's here. We're all going to learn from you. There's nothing you have to do. And yeah. And I swear, you know what's coming. He stepped on the stage that day, and as soon as the seminar started, bassa, away he goes with this shoulder. And it was he's just a different type of individual. But yeah, okay.
I understand what you're saying 100% because what happens is, and it happens to you, and it happens to me, it happens to Master Ainslow, Master Darcy, I'm sure Master Amherst, it happens to all of us. The second we dobok on, right?
Yeah.
The second we tie that belt, and it's even before that, but this makes it official, it's a stamp, we get infected, but not infected with what the bad stuff is. We get infected with Taekwondo.
Yeah.
And it overrides everything else. Because how many times have you had aches and pains?
Yeah.
Coming to the dojang. I know that in Korea once I injured my shoulder, my left shoulder, very, very badly. To this day, it still is a problem. But when I get into class, that's not something to think about. Yeah.
There's two areas that I still would love to touch on, and that is your visits to Korea and the books and the articles and what you've given back to the art through your writing. I really want to touch on that as well. But if we can touch on Korea first of all, and maybe even start on your first visit there and just bringing together your experiences of going to the homeland of our wonderful.
Yeah, it really is the homeland. It's so funny. I laugh because the first time I went, I didn't sponsor that trip. I had just tacked on with another group of students that were going from the school that I first trained at.
Yeah.
And I call it the CIA trip because we would go there and it was a big secret. No one knew where we were staying. No one knew where we were going. We would be sleeping in these, what I call safe houses, like an apartment with no furniture in it.
Yeah.
It was it was not organized, but we trained really, really well. I mean, it was some really brutal training, but I didn't really have any control over it, But there was one instance where we went to one thing led to another. It was so confusing. But one day we were there. It was the first day we got there, and we didn't sleep. We were awake for about 36 hours. Couldn't sleep on the plane. And we get there, and we're led to this huge fish market. I mean, it's the size of an airplane hangar, right? And they have every type of fish laid out that you can imagine, every type of seafood, from the littlest to the biggest. And most of it is moving still, right?
Yeah.
So the Grandmaster points to this one bucket, and it's got all these little baby octopus in it, little tiny.
Okay.
And they scoop a bucket out, and they carry the bucket up this stairs to this roof section that's filthy. There's broken toilet bowls and all sorts of things laying around, and a table. So we go sit at the table. There's about 10 of us and 3 or 4 other Grandmasters from Korea. So they take these little octopus and they start throwing them on plates in front of us. And then he's still moving. And they come with a knife and they start chopping off the heads. And they say, okay, eat. And half of the group said nothing doing. Me and another master, we said, we're going to eat everything they put in front of us.
Yeah.
We made that promise.
Yeah.
So we start eating these things with some kind of sauce on it. It was like fire. And we're eating them. You can feel them going down your throat, sucking on your throat as they go down, right?
Yeah.
Well, they bring these green bottles and put them down in front of us. And I think, 7-Up, this?
Yeah.
This
Yes. Yeah.
7-Up? Yeah. I figure that's what it is. So I grab it and start shooting it down. Well, wouldn't you know, it's soju.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And you know what soju is, right? I mean, soju, the Korean liquor. And that starts everything on fire. So my feeling was right from the beginning, they wanted to see what we can take and what we can't take.
Indeed. Yeah.
That was the first trip. All right. After that, I was in charge of all the trips. So either with Grandmaster Chun or myself with my own organization. And these trips are, again, what I call martial pilgrimages, because they're spiritual awakenings for the martial artists. That's truly what they are. You see things, if you go in with your eyes and ears open, you see things differently than you typically would see them from the perspective of an everyday life, right? Even landscapes you see differently. It's almost like a mind-altering situation. You have to prepare for that, for meditation, right? If you go to the famous pilgrimage in France and Spain, the Camino, right? You walk the Camino. It's a pilgrimage. If you go to Lourdes, it's a pilgrimage. That's how serious I take these trips. So when I plan them so that my students have comfort in great hotels. They have excellent food. We plot out the restaurants so they have excellent food. I get an English-speaking guide who is conversant in the history of Korea and often the history of Taekwondo as well.
Okay, yeah.
We hire luxury motor coaches so we get from one place to the other. And we don't just go to some place like most tours do, where you go to a university and you stay there. They put you up in dormitory-like surroundings where, you know, the bed is horrible and you have some terrible meals from time to time. You stay at the university and maybe you sightsee around the area and that's it. That's the trip. Our trips are training trips, right? We go to the Kukiwon, we go to the Taekwondo Wan, we go to some place called the International Taekwondo Kumgang Center. We go to Grandmaster Johan Lee's International World Taekwondo Instructor Academy. So we go to many of the temples high up in the mountains, like a movie. Yeah. Go to temple and train there. So every day contains training. Yeah. And yes, we do leave time for shopping. We leave time for free time to visit, you know, sightsee. But when you come back, you are charged with training for a year or two. You know, and every memory and everybody you meet on board becomes your spiritual Taekwondo brother and sister. You know. Yeah. So the Korea tours that we do are unique. They're singular. And in fact, many travel agencies contact me and say, how did you do this? How did you manage to do this? They ask me for my advice. And the tour guides are always saying, you're crazy. When we saw your itinerary, we thought you were joking. You really do want to train. You know, it's not just a sightseeing trip of Korea. So I feel it's fundamental because you need to make a connection geographically. You need to make a connection with the masters there to see what we were just talking about earlier. You know, the type of attitude that they have. And they're tough. They're unforgiving. They brook no rest. You work hard, you know. Like one master on that we worked with at the Kukiwon. And you make a chronological connection when we go to the museums and you see the history of Taekwondo. You know, we charge generally about $4,500, all inclusive. Air travel, hotels, everything, you know, just one fare. And while that might seem like a lot of money, when people come back, they go, I don't know how you did it. You know, how did you fit all that in for that type of price? You know, so we try to make it worthwhile financially for our students. And these are always open to everybody worldwide who wants to come. We've had students from all over the world join us. But I feel that a trip to Korea is really essential, at least one. And we've just completed our 9th. And, you know, and probably when this pandemic blows over and we have a little bit more breathing room, literally, we'll go back again, you know.
It's definitely, it has to be on the bucket list, of course. It has to be. Yeah, okay, wonderful. The other thing that I do want to talk to you about is because you're not just for your books that you've written on Taekwondo, but you're a prolific writer of articles, reports, etc. for a number of different publications. You obviously enjoy it and it's a calling, but is there a particular reason that you wanted to, or what drew you to becoming an author about Taekwondo as well?
You know, there's a saying in academia, It goes publish or perish.
Okay. Yep.
You know, and because, as I said earlier, that I look at Taekwondo more than just the physical part. I look at it as the triad of academic, spiritual, and physical, you know. I feel that in order to call yourself a master of the art, you need to contribute in an editorial or literary way as well. If you're able to. Not everybody's able to write. Now, fortunately, I've loved to write since I guess I was about 12 years old, you know. I used to use different things. I used to write scientific papers for my science class, you know,
Yep.
things like this. But I don't know that it's that I feel I have so much to say about Taekwondo that I feel compelled to write about it. I just feel that it's something channels me to write. You know, I feel like maybe Grandmaster Chun is telling me what to write. And in fact, he used to ask me to write his speeches for him. He said, even there was one time he was supposed to speak at a marriage, and he said, "You need to write the marriage speech for me." And he would say, "Doug, you'll get inside my head. My words are your words," you know. So I feel that connecting with people who like to read helps them through Taekwondo writing, you know, through writing. And I have no shortage of words. I mean, you can hear right now, maybe I'm too effusive. Maybe I should compact what I'm saying.
Not at all. Not at all.
Less, more, you know, to less. But the feedback I get from my readers, you know, whether it be Taekwondo Times or Totally Taekwondo magazine with Master Ainslow, who I think is doing a great service. Yeah. Master Stuart Ainslow is one of the saints of Taekwondo. That's what I think. Because, first of all, he's persevered through all these issues that he's had. I think he's up to 145 or something like this now. I've been writing for him since 2009, every month, because I want to support him. And he's managed to do that. And he's managed to do it by staying faithful to Taekwondo. Almost never do you see an article in there that doesn't have to do with Taekwondo. Today, the magazines that say Taekwondo, whatever, judo, everything is in there, right? I am a purist when it comes to Taekwondo. I want to know about Taekwondo. I don't care if it's ITF, W2F, AIMMEE, AA, I don't care, you know, as long as it's Taekwondo, you know. And he gives us that outlet. Same thing with Hunlian magazine, you know. So the writers, the readers write back to me and they say, you know, I was expecting the same old from your books, and they're not. They feel like you're talking directly to me. And as far as I feel, as long as I can keep writing, I will. I just submitted the manuscript for my 5th book to my publisher the other day. You know, hopefully they'll like it, because, you know, that's the way I like to work. I want to be published by a real publisher, not self-published. I prefer to be accepted and reviewed by my peers, have a group of editors work on it, so when it comes out, you know, everything is correct. That's the way I like to do it. And again, as long as I can continue writing, I will, you know.
Can you give us a little exclusive about what the new book might possibly...
Yeah, I'll be glad to, sure. Yeah, and I'll tell you even a little bit of a story about it too, because, geez, it must have been about 2000, maybe 2014, around then, 2015. Grandmaster Chun and I were at a Mediterranean restaurant enjoying a really nice lunch once. And he said to me, "I think that it's time for us to write another book." You know, because we had just written Taekwondo Black Belt Pumse, original choreo and choreo. And I said, "Really? Okay, great. You know, what, you have any idea what you want it to be about?" You know, and he said, "Yeah, this book is going to be different. It's going to be mainly, it's not going to be about technique. It's not going to be about kicking or forms or things like that. It's going to be a group of essays, you know, on the philosophy of Taekwondo, and then a section about Pumse, about its history and its importance in Taekwondo. And then we're going to harvest all our memories from our trips to Korea and what we did and what we learned during those times, you know, with pictures and things like this."
Wonderful.
And I said, "Wow, that sounds good." You know what I'm saying? He had this mission look in his eye, like a child, you know, he was so excited, you know. And I said, "Well, do you have a name for the book?" you know? And he said, I do, you know? And he called it the Eden of Taekwondo.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The Eden of Taekwondo, like the Garden of Eden,
Of
you know?
course. Yep. Yep.
And so, unfortunately, while we were playing around with it, he became sick and he, ultimately passed away. And for a year or two, I just couldn't bring myself to work on it. And then I said, no, I have to do this. I have to write this book. So I went ahead and added some things that I know he would be very proud of, and completed it, put it all together. And I said, New Year's is going to be my deadline. I set my deadline in September.
Yeah.
New Year's came, I finished it, and it went off to my publisher the other day.
Brilliant.
So if they go for it, if they find it's viable, sometime in the next year, the Eden of Taekwondo will grace the racks again.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Grandmaster Ramirez, who we've mentioned a number of times, I haven't met anybody with such an encyclopedic mind of martial arts publications. And if there's a book on Taekwondo or any martial art, that man has it. And he speaks very highly of the books that you've published. He always has done of all the stuff that you've published. And he's read them all and has them all probably. So no, the books and the articles. I primarily see you in Master Anslow's magazine, and it's always quality stuff. It's always quality stuff. Okay, sir. I think we're nearing the end now. What I would love is, and I always put people under pressure when I ask this, but I know you'll produce. Can you leave us just with a bit of a positive message or a little bit of encouragement for moving forward through the next few months?
Yes, absolutely. And it's not hard because, again, what we do is so good for people in general, physically, mentally. What we do is Taekwondo is a lifeboat on troubled seas. That's what it is. We're going through a tumultuous time right now. But you, me, all the masters that we spoke about earlier are in this lifeboat. We're at the helm, and we have our arms down, pulling people out of the water, reaching for them and holding them, right, and keeping them safe. That sea will even out someday. I'm not prescient. I can't tell you when that will be, but I'm confident that it's not going to be too long from now with the vaccines going around the world and things like this. And I can tell you that those of us who stay with us, those of us who persevere through these difficult times, some of the most difficult that I hope that we will ever see in our lifetimes, will be so proud of themselves that they stayed with, I'm talking about our Taekwondo people, will be so proud that they stayed and got through this. We have, I don't have one here, but we have a special patch that we made. It's called the Perseverance Patch. And it has a fist, and it's a blue and a red on top and a little square. And I gave it to all my students to wear as a badge to remind them when times are better what they've gone through, right? So Grandmaster Chun had an axiom. He had 3 words that he lived by. And I believe in it. And we said, oh, may I have that? Oh, thank you very much. My wife just handed me that.
Brilliant.
Well, we had shirts made, but that's the patch right there.
Fantastic, yep.
And he had 3 words that he believed in, and I live by them. And we say them at the end of every class now, and it's never give up. Never give up, And if we can live by those words, not just mouth them, but live by them, right? We have hope. And I'm confident we'll get through this, but there's still scary times ahead. But we have the wherewithal. We have the ally of indomitable will and perseverance to help us get through, I feel very strongly about that.
Grandmaster Cook, you are a gentleman and a scholar, sir. It's been a total treat. As many of the episodes have been for me, it's given me this wonderful opportunity to chat to people like yourself. I can't thank you enough for coming on. It's been really, really special.
Thank you so much for asking me. and you have a beautiful family. And
Thank
please
you,
give
sir.
them my best.
I will for sure. I will for sure. Okay, sir. Thank you, and hopefully I'll get to chat to you sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you, sir, and give my respect to your master, please.
Absolutely,
Grandmaster
sir. Absolutely. Okay, bye, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
감사합니다.
Thank you, sir.